Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sure had a great time last week in Life Church in Boise. Actually, we were doing it online, but we had a wonderful time. There's such hungry people there. And then we were at Spokane Christian Center this last weekend, online, of course, had a great time. And if you're in the, actually, you don't have to be in the Jackson, Mississippi area. You can go online at Relate Church. We'll be there tonight speaking with Chuck and Tammy Ford. We'll have a great time. We're coming to you every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war, because the rapture of the church is signless, but the second coming has tons of signs. So we examined both the Ezekiel 38 war setup and the signs of the second coming, so we can tell how close we are. I hear people say, well, you can't tell when the Lord's coming back. Actually, you can if you look at the signs, just like on the freeway. If you knew you're a couple hundred miles away from your destination, the signs give you indicators that you're getting closer. You even have mile markers for emergency vehicles to show you every single mile where you are. Well, wow, the last few weeks, the last 4 or 5 weeks, there's mile markers ticking off how close we are to the coming of the Lord. So let's pick up what's happened around Israel. Why do we do this? It's not an escape theology, it's a hustle theology. As you see the finish line, you run faster. In a football game, I've heard people go, well, you don't need to talk about end times. Tell a quarterback that in the last couple minutes of the game, he looks at the play clock to balance his urgency, to put it all in those last 2 minutes. So we can see things that are happening every single week that tell the church we've got to pick up the speed. We've got to do more than we've ever done before in a short period of time. Jesus is just about to come. Wonderful time. Scary for the world. The coronavirus thing. I mean, people say, what's the coronavirus? We know exactly what that is according to Scripture. Those are birth pains. Those are contractions according to Matthew 24. And Jesus said there would be world war, there'd be famine, there'd be pestilence, there'd be earthquakes. Well, the coronavirus is just like a woman going into labor. It gets so severe, the contractions get so severe that you can't ignore it. And that's exactly what's happened. And it is eerily bizarre that it's just like when Israel was basically in quarantine at the first Passover. And this is the first time in thousands of years that Israel did not get to really participate in Passover because of a pandemic, just like the first plague when the angel of death passed over because of the blood of the Lamb. Remarkable times because of all this. So we're getting into all this, though, because we can tell. We weren't taught years ago that you could tell when the Lord's coming back, but it's blatant how the Lord put so much information in so many verses about it. Let's pick up with what's happened around Israel. Lots of things are happening, so let's look at it. I'll try to go through the main ones before we get to all the signs, because, man, there seems to be signs happening every week. Crazy. First of all, you had missiles fired from Gaza, rockets fired from Gaza into Israel. Israel responded with tank fire into Gaza. You had Abbas say if Israel annexes any land in Judea, Samaria, he will dismantle the Palestinian Authority. That's a cool thing because Israel's getting ready to annex Judea and Samaria because it's their land they won back in the 1967 war, the Six-Day War. And you have many political things happening with Benjamin Netanyahu being a co-prime minister with Benny Gantz. I mean, you've got the left trying to file charges that can keep him from being a prime minister, but there's more to that we'll get to in a little bit. But boy, they're really freaking out about that. If they do freak out about that, they'll have to have another fourth election. But more things are happening with Israel. Another airstrike in Aleppo by Israel. They took out a research center. This is a research center in Syria. Last week was Damascus. This week was Aleppo. A research center where they looks like chemical weapons are made. The attack went from there up to the Syrian-Iraqi border. This is the 5th airstrike in 2 weeks. It looks like Israel's taking advantage of people being preoccupied with the coronavirus and is taking out stockpile and shipment of missiles coming to Lebanon. I like that Germany finally announced this week that they're not going to recognize Hezbollah. That's where all these missiles are coming from Iran down into Syria, so that Hezbollah can get them with real sophisticated guidance systems that they didn't have 3 or 4 years ago. So Israel has to do something. This is a big deal that came out this week too about Israel is going to have to do something preemptively. And that is the international watchdog community came out saying, hey, Iran has not abided by any of its sanctions at all. It's without any restrictions at all. It's enriching uranium. It's seeing the fuel cycle of uranium. It's building 2 more nuclear facilities in Bashir. And there'll be brand new high kind of modern centrifuges online at Natanz. So you've got brand new centrifuges They're basically saying we're going to build an atomic weapon as soon as we can. You put 4 or 5 things together that they've even gotten in everyone else's face because they've been going around the sanctions by America. Other nations have been helping them. So you watch. Israel will retaliate. You watch. It's going to be, well, not retaliate, but be having a preemptive strike just to save their nation. You got China doing crazy things. You got in the South China Sea, the United States having to block a ship. You have China touting its brand new stealth bomber that has the range to go all the way to Los Angeles. In the middle of that, you got North Korea firing shots at South Korea. So you got crazy stuff happening in China, crazy stuff happening in North and South Korea, because the Bible said the kings of the East will come over at the second coming, and they'll come across the Euphrates. That's a pretty big deal because ISIS was damming up the Euphrates years ago, and knowing that that's going to happen, it's pretty crazy that the pieces of the puzzle are all coming together. But let's go into some of the signs that we go into every week, and there's some new ones that we talked about the other day that are so cool. You had Rabbi Itzhak Kaduri received Jesus right before he died. They opened that letter a year later. He said, I've come to find out that Jesus is the Messiah. But there were also some prophecies that he brought forth back then. This was 2005. Remarkable that he prophesied that when the Messiah would come, Israel would be ruled by 2 Benjamins. You had Benjamin Netanyahu, Benjamin Gantz last week joint rulership as prime ministers of Israel. Now that's a big deal because they say, hey, the Messiah's here. You had the water around the Temple Mount, the ritual baths fill up with water. The rabbi said the Messiah has to come right now. You had the Sea of Galilee fill up with water. This is the second time again they talked about it this last week. Oh, the Messiah has to come right now. Well, he is coming right now, but it's a false Messiah. They're going to have the Antichrist come on the scene. They're going to think he's the Messiah because all of these signs are so blatant to them, they're going to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Well, it should tell us that Jesus is about to come back as well. So we go to number 1, Israel made a nation. After that, Jerusalem won back. Jesus said the group of people sees that will not pass away till all is fulfilled. Then you got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You got the revival of the Roman Empire. You got the Temple Mount Institute. You have 172 different species of predatory birds. You have fish showing up in the Dead Sea. That was prophesied 2,700 years ago. You have foxes showing up on the Temple Mount. That's from Lamentations 5:18. I mean, sign after sign after sign after sign, blatantly in our face that Jesus is about to come back. Men will be lovers themselves. We have selfie sticks. What a blessing. So we have many more signs. I mean, they're just remarkable. If you got into all of it, it's overwhelming. But you go from signs to signals. You had blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. That's pretty radical. Several years ago to have 4 blood red moons in a row on Passover and Tabernacles. I didn't even talk about it. You have tonight a supermoon, last night a supermoon, flower moon, the last supermoon of this year, 4 in a row. And you have a meteor shower this week as well. Just like you've had asteroids 9 do near flybys in the month of April, 34 so far this year. It's crazy. But we had 4 blood red moons in a row. NASA calls it a tetrad. When's the last time you had 4 in a row on Passover and Tabernacles? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. 1948 when Israel was made a nation, and 1492 the Edict of Expulsion. That's so wild. The heavens are signaling, I died for you, I'm coming back. And then you had the Bethlehem star. It doesn't get any more radical than that. At the birth of Jesus, you had Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus come together. Jupiter, king planet. Regulus, regal, king planet. Venus, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, a mother planet. All 3 of them came together at the birth of Jesus. Constellation was Virgo. Wow, this last year, NBC Nightly News said we have a celestial event. You got Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus. Bethlehem star. What was the constellation? Leo. He's the lion of the tribe of Judah. So you have all this happening right now. We're signals in the heavens, signs in the earth. Why? The Lord loves us. All this information is not like, hey, God's mad at us. All this information is because He loves you so much. He wants you expectant. He wants you joyful. He wants you excited because they're blatant. They're exact. They're amazingly clear to show us that we're about to be caught up. We're about to be raptured. There's a lot of weird teaching saying the rapture is not going to happen, but Enoch was raptured, handed off to Noah. Elijah was raptured, handed off to Elisha. Jesus was raptured, handed off to the church. The church will be raptured and we'll hand off to the Jews. God's going to raise up 144,000 Jewish evangelists. They're going to harvest the earth. We'll get our harvest before we leave, and they're going to have a massive harvest that the Bible says is innumerable. Wow. Half the population One's taken and one's left at the second coming, 50%. Just like on the cross, one thief got saved, the other thief did not. So these are Bible times. This is the best time to ever be on the planet. It's scary for the world, wonderful for the church. You have the answer. All the stuff that's going on is contractions, birth pains, getting ready for the tribulation and getting ready for the entrance of the King. Remember, Daniel freaked out when he saw all that and said, man, what's up with this? Gabriel said, don't worry. The Ancient of Days will prevail. Soon and very soon, you're about to meet the Ancient of Days. The one that was and is to come. The whole earth is full of his glory. He's the Alpha and the Omega. Wow. He's the brightness of the glory of God. Wow. Shepherd and Bishop of our souls, Jesus. How amazing to get to see him. So let's accelerate. As we look unto him, let's accelerate as fast as we can because Jesus is about to come. Help your local church. Help your local pastor. Get the message out. Do everything you can to be engaged. To be eventually, we're going to get to come back to church. So before that, do everything you can to be engaged. Then soon, gather as much as you can. Hey, Colleen and I want to thank you for joining us. We're getting more stuff put on our YouTube page, Joe Morris Ministries, and more stuff on Instagram so that you can go and look. And you can look on our website, josephmorris.com. There's pictures almost for every sign. We're eventually going to, our new book's coming out. We're going to try to make it as easy as possible to learn things about how close we are because the King is coming so soon. Have a blessed, awesome week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the edu at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.